Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session today, CFNC in Español, Advancing Acceso y Éxito in Post-Secondary Education through Connecting, Collaborating, and Comunidad. Before we begin, I want to cover some housekeeping items. This session will be recorded. Please leave your cameras off and microphones muted throughout the session. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A feature. We will get to as many of them as we can at the end of the session. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our presenter, Juana Hernandez-Lira. Juana Hernandez-Lira is originally from Mexico, Estado de Mexico, but raised in Raleigh, North Carolina, which she considers her hometown. After earning her Bachelor's of Arts from North Carolina State University, Mrs. Hernandez-Lira began her career trajectory leading dropout prevention and college access programs in the state. Her 10 years of experience working with young adults and their families stems from her work with the North Carolina Society of Hispanic Professionals, Communities in Schools, the North Carolina Juntos Program, and Haven House Services. She is currently a state representative for Spanish services with the College Foundation of North Carolina, helping Spanish-speaking youth and families plan, apply, and pay for college. She also works closely with community partners, educators, colleges, and universities to identify college access strategies for underrepresented, and first-generation students. Mrs. Hernandez-Lira is the first in her family to attend and graduate college. And like many students, she was unaware of the steps to attend college. Thus, she is committed to serving youth and their families across North Carolina and ensuring that families understand, feel comfortable, and have the resources to help their student achieve academic success and attend higher education. And now I turn it over to Juana and Dr. Ramirez. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the great introduction, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And my co-presenter today who's with me is Dr. Juanes Ramirez. And Dr. Juanes Ramirez also serves as a state representative for Spanish services with College Foundation of North Carolina. A little bit about Dr. Juanes Ramirez. He earned his Bachelor of Arts in International Business in Spanish from Lenore College. He also completed a Master's of Science from Mountain State University, as well as accumulated his professional development with an educational specialist degree in higher education, and completed a doctoral degree in education leadership and administration from App State University. Dr. Ramirez's mission has been sharing across the state the transformative power of education. I also want to share that Dr. Ramirez was recently recognized or received a very prestigious award from his community as the top 10 under 40 in Hickory, which I'm very proud of him for that. So in this session, we will be talking about how CFNC in Español through connecting, collaborating, and service to our comunidad, how we are providing tools and resources to support Hispanic, Latinx students' access and success in North Carolina. We will review a little bit about what CFNC is for those of you who may not be familiar. We'll be going into some terms and definitions so that we can understand kind of what the North Carolina looks like as terms as Latinos in North Carolina. We will also be talking a little bit about what we are seeing and hearing across the state. And then we'll be talking about how CFNC in Español and through comunidad, collaboration, and connection, how we are moving the needle forward in our communities. So to begin, as I mentioned, we will be talking about CFNC. So those of you that are not familiar with College Foundation of North Carolina, it is a statewide resource dedicated to help North Carolinians plan, apply, and pay for college. We are a collaboration of 6 entities. These 6 entities that make CFNC possible include the public institutions, the 17 public institutions, the 36 independent colleges and universities, the community college system, so the 58 community college system. Also, the State Education Assistance Authority forms part of CFNC, and the SCAA, they mainly manage a lot of what it is, the funding, so they administer a lot of the funding there. We also work with the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, or K-12, and Juanes and I are housed at College Foundation Incorporated, and so we definitely do not do this work alone. We work in collaboration. So all of us work together to provide what is a one-stop shop website for anything that students need to know about planning, applying, and paying for college. We also have a telephone service or a call center for students who may have questions. We also work a lot with educators throughout the entire state. And CFNC offers field representatives in every area code. So there are 9 of us total, and 2 of the 9 are dedicated and serving the Spanish-speaking community in North Carolina. So I mainly serve eastern part of the state, and Dr. Ramirez serves mainly the western part of the state. But CFNC en Español is an initiative that has been really, our goal has been to provide free resources and free tools to ensure that our communities thrive in their post-secondary education endeavors. Our connection, collaborators, and comunidad is really what inspires us to connect linguistically, culturally, and authentically. And we're going to share about how these core values drive our work and our mission. We're going to be sharing some examples. We're going to be talking about how it is that we are doing this work. And hopefully this can inspire you to think about how you can move the needle forward, how you can also, through collaboration, through connection, through comunidad, can move that needle forward for your students and your communities. So really quickly, just wanted to share that we are a small team. We're a small team serving the entire state of North Carolina. I also wanted to share that this year we recently had the opportunity to work with an intern from the School of Social Work at UNC Chapel Hill. So this is an example already of how we are collaborating, connecting. And so Jackie Perez has joined us this year, and she will be with us through May, helping us with some projects and helping us to move the needle forward. So we are a very small team, but we are a very proud team, and we are very proud to have the opportunity to serve over 1 million Latinos in North Carolina. So for those of us that may not know, North Carolina has exceeded over 1 million Latinos or Hispanics. And so we are 11% of the population. So it's definitely a growing population. It is a diverse population. And as we work with Hispanic students, it's important to know that 6 out of 10 are actually US born. So majority of the students that we work with are US born. And over 50% of the population identify as Mexican ancestry. I myself, I am from Mexico. I was born in Mexico. And so a lot of times when I go to presentations and sessions, I'll ask, where are we from? And majority of our families will say that they are from Mexico, but we definitely see other countries represented. We are a very diverse population. Our students also are bilingual. 77% of our students speak other languages other than English at home. So we're seeing that our students have that the bilingualism, and so it's something that we see across different communities. And one of the other things that we have been seeing is students who are speaking their native dialects, which I think it's really cool that there are students who speak their native dialects. And although we are seeing improvements in college enrollment and attainment, Hispanics continue to have lower enrollment rates. However, we know, in working with students, we know from the data, we know that aspirations for post-secondary education are high within the Latino community, within the Hispanic community. And so we know that they do have high aspirations, and so we work to ensure that we are providing them the tools and the resources to help them make the best decision possible for them, and for them to go to college if that's what they want, to achieve. So when we look at the attainment rates, only 15% of Latinos hold bachelor's degree, and 22% of Latino adults have an associate's degree. So this is lower compared to 46% of white non-Hispanic adults. So we definitely have some work to do there, right? But a lot of the efforts that we are doing, that other communities are doing, we're definitely working to increasing and helping to move the needle forward in college enrollment, college attainment. And the last note that I want to mention, or data that I want to mention, is that in the community college system, Latinos make up 12% of the student body. And although more Latino students are enrolling at the North Carolina community colleges, and they are demonstrating a lot of intentions in enrolling in a North Carolina community college, four-year schools actually have higher rates of retention and attainment. And so it's an interesting data point there that we can definitely explore at another time. But I just wanted to share these few statistics, few data points for us to just kind of understand what Latinos in North Carolina, what that looks like. And also want to go into talking a little bit about some terminology, right? Because I think that a lot of times we hear different terms. We hear, I just mentioned Latinos, I just said Hispanic. And so we're going to be going over, I want to review these terms because we are going to be using them interchangeably. And so these terms are used to describe a group that makes up over 18% of our population in the US. So when we look at the term Hispanic was given to us by the US government, and it was introduced in the 1980s during the Nixon administration. And this term was created for census purposes, and it refers to individuals who are Spanish speaking or have backgrounds that are from a Spanish speaking country. And this would also include Spain, but it excludes Brazil. The term Latino refers to individuals that are from Latin America. And so this term actually would include Brazil, but it would exclude Spain. And then the term Latinx, it's a newer term, and it's a gender neutral term that was recently created. And we have heard this term used a lot by younger generation, a lot of college campuses, a lot of, like I mentioned, younger generations use this term, but there is a lot of controversy with the term Latinx. And so some individuals don't like it, some of them do like it. And some individuals actually prefer the term Latine, which is also a gender neutral term of the form Latino in the Spanish language. And this is used a lot in, for example, Argentina and other Spanish speaking countries. And so there's a lot of controversy with these terms. If you ask me how I identify myself, I will say that I identify as Latina. And so it's important that as you're working with students, you can ask them, what do you want to be called, or how do you identify? So as you know, we do have a very diverse community in the state of North Carolina and across the country. And so as my colleague, Dr. Ramirez, and I have worked with communities and Latinos across the state, we have worked with students who come from mixed status families. And the majority of the students that we work with do come from mixed status families, right? So mixed status families are students who come from mixed status families are students that are typically US born, and maybe their parents are undocumented. And so we work with a lot of students that come from mixed status households. We also work with DACA students. You probably have heard of the term DACA, or Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. And so we're working with DACA students, undocumented students, students from temporary protected status, refugees, asylees, students who are resident, students that are here are non-immigrant statuses, students that are visa holders. And so we're not going to be going a lot over the challenges and the terms here, but it's just important to know that we do have a very diverse population, and we cannot make assumptions of whether the student is a US citizen, or they're undocumented, or or whatever. And it's also important to know that based on their status, they may be limited to certain opportunities in the state or in the country. And actually some visas, students that hold certain visas are not eligible to enroll in curriculum courses at the community colleges, even though we say that there is an open door policy. And so those are some of the things that it's important to keep in mind. So some homework for you all is just to look up these terms and see what they mean. And if you work with students that may be DACA undocumented, lawful permanent residents, try to build an intentional relationship with them, but also most importantly is just understanding how the laws and the current policies may be affecting our students, because we are definitely seeing a lot of hearing and seeing a lot of things as we work across the state of North Carolina. So we're hearing a lot of challenges. We're hearing a lot about the successes. We're seeing and hearing about what works, what does not work. And so this next conversation, or the next part of this session, is talking about what is moving. What are we hearing? What is it that is moving Latinos forward? What is making a difference in our communities as we are advancing educational access and attainment for Latinx students? And how is it that it's being done? Through connecting, through comunidad, and through collaboration. But before we go into this, I want to share a story really quick. So I want to share a story, and this is something that has really impacted me. Let me just start with the story. When I was in middle school, when I was in 6th grade, in my social studies class, my social studies teacher tasked us with a project, and that project was to talk about a country. And I chose my country, Mexico, because I was born in Mexico. I came here at the age of 4, and I felt like I wanted to represent my country and I wanted to represent my culture. So part of the project was to make a dish, to get extra credit. So I was so excited. I was so excited because my mom's cooking skills are on point, and she's just the best cook out there. So I was so excited. I remember coming home and telling my mom about this project and how excited I was that we had the opportunity to share our dish, our culture, and our tradition with my classmates. And my mom and I went back and forth about what can I make? ¿Qué puedo hacer? So my mom suggested that we make torrejas. So torreja is kind of a version of a French toast. And so it's something that we would eat very regularly in our household for breakfast or even as a dessert. And so my mom made torrejas she made some torrejas for me to take to school. The next day I wake up, my mom makes the torrejas, and I just remember being so excited. I was so excited to share the torrejas with my classmates. And so I get on the bus, I'm walking around school with my torreja. And I don't know if any of you buy the ice cream buckets that has the 3 different flavors. I think it's called the Napolitan. I forget what it's called, but it's a bucket with the 3 different flavors. So my mom decided to put my torrejas in one of those buckets. So I'm walking around with the bucket on campus or on the school. And so when class started, it was my turn to present, and it was my turn to share torrejas with my classmates. So I started handing out the torrejas, and I was just looking with excitement to see my teacher's reaction. And I was very upset and disappointed to see that when I placed the plate on my teacher's desk, she pushed it to the side and she did not try my torreja. None of my classmates, except for one student who was a Black student from my neighborhood, he was the only one who tried my torreja. And the other classmates, because my teacher did not try the torreja, because she pushed it to the side, they did the same. I was so upset. I was so disappointed, and I still get upset thinking about this. Because I think about the impact and the hurt that cost me. Oh, I'm sorry, y'all. Ooh, I did not think I was gonna get this emotional. Hold on. So this this really caused a lot of hurt. It really impacted me. I remember coming home and I remember being so upset with my mother. I was so angry with my mom because I blamed her. I thought to myself, why didn't my mom make a dish that my friends were gonna like, that my teacher was gonna like? Like, why did she make the torrejas? Why couldn't she make a churro or like something else, or a tamal? And I was upset with my mom. I resented her for that. And of course, I didn't tell her that nobody ate my torreja, but it took years to realize that the frustration and the resentment and the anger that I felt at that point was not towards my mother. It was towards my teacher, my classmates, mainly my teacher. And it took years to realize that our parents are not to blame. It is the systems, the structures that are put in place that make it difficult for us, that are not meant for people like us. And so I realized that it was, again, the systems that I was frustrated with the system. I was frustrated with the lack of knowledge and the lack of training that perhaps my teacher might have had. Maybe she didn't know any better. But I think about, had my teacher tried my torreja, it would have made a world of a difference, because after that moment, I became embarrassed. I became ashamed of my culture. It took years for me to want to share my dish. It took years for me to want to speak my language in school. I became ashamed of who I was. And so I share all this to say that being intentional in how we connect with our students, being intentional in how we act, is very important. Had this teacher tried my torreja, things would have been really different for me. They would have been really different. I would have felt proud. I would have been happy. I would have felt like, mom, she loved it, even if she didn't like it, right? Like, I would have felt like she valued me as a person and she really valued my culture. So just wanted to share this story because I always think of the power of connection and intentionality. And I think this is why the work that I do it with intention, and the relationships that I build are done with intention and genuine, like being genuine. So yeah, I hope that you enjoyed the story, and I hope that as you were listening, if there's anything that resonated with you, or if you ever have a situation like this, think about, how can I show support for this student who's sharing their culture, who's opening up, or who is proud? Like, how do I make them proud of their identity and who they are? So just wanted to share that story with you all. And now I'm going to pass the microphone over to Dr. Juanes Ramirez. Ramirez is going to continue this conversation.
Thank you so much, Juana. That's a important story to tell, and thank you for sharing it. So we want to continue the conversation about how we do things in CFNC and Español, and we wanted to just show you how we do it and what is our framework of to make things happen. So we do make a very intentional decision. Instead of focusing on all the barriers that we have that sometimes blame our students and blame our parents, we think about what skills or what can we cultivate and do more of. And that really provides us a better framework for what we do. So we go against deficit views that permeate our systems and our education, and we focus on the strengths that our communities bring to the different spaces. So what we want to share with you today is some of the things that we have seen that are working. So the first thing is cultural awareness and responsiveness. So not only being aware, but also doing something about it. Ms. Hernandez-Lira mentioned a great story about being a cultural aware. At CFNC en Español, we try to be very put at the center, of course, our students and families, and think about the experiences where they're coming from. And within those experiences, we have students that may be our first generation students, and then we also are having the other side of the coin, people with really high educational levels. So we try to come up in the middle and try to share the information in the best way that that applies to everyone. We don't make the assumption, like many other people, that says that you should be writing in a second and third level. We try to go in the middle, and then we adjust depending on the type of conversation that we are having. My colleague Juana mentioned communication style. So many students are bilingual, right? But also, she also noticed that there are many indigenous communities that they still speak in their dialects, and we have to be also mindful of that sometimes Spanish is not even the first language. But we also are very mindful about ways that families prefer to be communicated with. We know younger generations, they appreciate more the technology. And then the older generations, they probably want a more face-to-face type of situation or a more personalized attention, whether that is virtual or whether that is a phone call, but they do appreciate that even more. We also are we talk about our beliefs and customs, and I will be sharing a little bit more about my story, but I am from Colombia, and then Ms. Hernandez-Lira is from Mexico. And as you can see, we come from very different parts of the world, very different upbringings, but there's always few things that connect us. And one of them is that high respect for people in charge. And this is something important to know, because a lot of times, for example, when we're having conversations with people and we look them in the eyes here in the American system, we assume that they're paying attention, that they're engaged, and that they want to have a conversation with you, while we sometimes assume that people that are not looking us in the eyes could be disrespectful. But this is the opposite in most of our cultures, where we see people with high respect. And so they're not necessarily going to look you at the eyes, because it is a little bit offensive to see someone in power in the eyes. It can be seen as something offensive. So again, you come here to the United States and you have to navigate all of these values and customs that are different from what they're used to. And so sometimes people can make the assumption that that person could be rude just because they're not looking you in the eyes. There's also a focus on the we instead of the I, and I think that comes through our work at CFNC en Español. I cannot do what I do without my team. Like, it is a team effort, and we always are putting things together as a family, right? We're trying to make it work as a team. And in that's a little bit different from the mainstream culture, where there's a very emphasis in I. What can I do to be better? What can I do? What skills can I bring to the table? It's a very focus on the I. So it's something that we just have to notice. Also, schools and communities that are doing well, supporting our community, are creating intentional spaces where someone can also continue their development. Whether that is as a club, whether that is a Greek organization, whether that is just opening your office up, or whether that is also through a website. Those individuals and organizations that are creating those intentional spaces for people to be seen and heard, and sometimes even that healing that comes from all of those experiences that we had, are helping us to move the needle forward. Ms. Hernandez-Lira again mentioned the possibility of healing, and how it took so many years for her to come to terms with that healing. And I think that's something that maybe we could have worked on it a little bit earlier if we would had a space to talk about these things. Programs that are using the mentorship concept and sponsorship. So not only taking someone under your wing, but also presenting that someone into opportunities, whether that is I'm taking a student with me to present in a conference, or, hey, I know that there's this organization that you should be connecting with because you need this or that. That's a sponsorship. We have seen also allyship is super important. Some people consider this as sharing the burden, right? Sharing the concern, being open to other experiences, and just being an ally to support and sometimes lift, sometimes hold, sometimes amplify. We are seeing success when we have representation in decision making. So it is really interesting for us to go into certain communities that decisions are being made when no one is part of the community being impacted. And we see this all the time. We have large numbers of grassroots organizations and things like that, but it doesn't translate necessarily into the leadership on the top and the decision making. And also something that we continue to hear is that allow us to tell our own stories. Do not tell our stories on our behalf sometimes when there are so many examples of people that can be uplifted and amplify their stories. So we have seen great success with places that create that space. I wanted to show you very quickly some examples, and it is very obvious. I was trying to pick an example from the eastern part of North Carolina and also from the western side of the state. So in front of you, you have UNC Wilmington website, and I cannot just not notice that diversity and inclusion is an important pillar for them, right? They have academics, research, arts, culture, diversity, and inclusion in athletics. This is very visual. This is at the front of the website. I don't have to search for it. I already know what they're up to. Another concept that it's new, this is from Lenore University in Western North Carolina, but I wanted you to see something that they have in their website, which is really bold. They actually are going to be reducing tuition by 30%. So from 43,000 to 30,000 beginning fall 2023. So not only they are talking about commitment, but they're showing through their actions that commitment. I don't see many schools actually reducing their tuition to increase access and affordability. Something else that we have seen that it works is seeing the difference between educación and education. So educación is more holistic. We're thinking about the mind, body, and soul of a student. My parents' goal for my educación was to be a good man. They didn't care about the degrees. They just wanted me to be a good man. So that's kind of like the holistic idea of education. It is really important to know that parents do play a big part in the decision-making process. And therefore, for us, schools that are looking into sharing information in a way that parents can understand, also organizations that maybe have parental involvement, mentors or parent guidance, parent programs, they seem to be doing really, really well. They feel connected to what's happening, whether that is educational, because a lot of times they feel like they're only used for certain things. Like, for example, maybe providing or cooking for an event, but not being able to use their other talents and contribution and achievements that they have. Inclusion of the family also in all processes. For example, admissions, enrollment, we have very specific safeguards for students' information. And so FERPA is one of the biggest ones that we don't see many conversations around it that our community needs to know about. So for example, if a parent wants to check on their student, we have seen parents literally walking all over campus trying to find that information when we know that they can, they might not be able to tell them anything unless they have this this form sign. A great example that we have here in the state of North Carolina that is making ripple effects in other states is the Juntos program. The Juntos program is a program where the students are involved, but also the requirement is that the parents have to be involved as well. They do all kinds of activities to support students developing culturally and also college, all of those great things, great milestones that we all need to think about when we're going to college, from the planning to the applying to the paying. So just wanted to mention Juntos and give them a shout out because it is a fantastic example that we can do it, but we can do it together. One of the characteristics that really is a key ingredient that is needed to foster success in our community is confianza. Confianza means trust. So being in this relationship bounded by authenticity and being bounded by reciprocity. It is super important. So that gives us the opportunity not only to express maybe our lived experiences, but also help us to connect with students in the other side too, from your own perspectives and ideas. Our students and families are experts navigating complexity. I mean, if you think about the complexity of higher education as a system or post-secondary education as a system, just think about all the hoops that students have to do to be able to meet any goals they have. So we work with large generations of we work with large numbers of first generation students that we hear that they're giving the gift of education to the familia, right? So they're not doing it for themselves, but they're doing it for la familia. They learn how to adapt to the situation, whether that is language, maybe the family speaks a language in the home, maybe they have to speak another language out of the home. That's my case. I have to be back and forth between English and Spanish all day long. So that takes some adaptability, also being able to navigate to cultures and doing successfully, right? How do you navigate cultures? Sometimes there is also that performativity where our students do feel like they're imposter. They feel, for example, guilty for going to post-secondary education. Sometimes they feel like they don't quite fit in. And I think that that's something that also creating those spaces can help us to facilitate. So I did mention that I am from Colombia. This picture actually that you see in front of you is me walking the streets of used to be a very dangerous place in Medellin. That's where I'm from, Comuna 13. And that's a place where no one would walk freely. And it's a place also that has a lot of sad stories. A lot of people die in the war in Colombia. Those were communities that were not accessible to anyone because they were controlled by military groups. But that community has uplifted themselves, and through investment and through changing that narrative, they are thriving. And so I wanted to bring this picture to you, one, because I can relate greatly with my life experiences being an immigrant coming to the United States and overnight being given a term that I didn't know what it meant. So I was given the term being part of this community, being Latino. And for me, being Latino was just being part of Latin America, right? But when you are Latino in the United States, it matters. It has consequences. It has implications. It has things that I was not thinking about or that I have never thought about. I never, no one ever called me, "Hey, Colombia, how are you?" Like, no, that's not, or even what it meant to be Latino in the United States. So I just wanted to make sure you guys are aware that those terms that my colleague mentioned are not terms that we use in other countries. I actually came to the United States a little bit older. I was 12 years old when I came here to the United States. And I'm not gonna say that it has been easy. It has sometimes been a challenge, especially when you're thinking about your cultural development. And then I didn't see many other Colombians in my community, as my colleague Hernandez-Lira mentioned. The majority are Mexican origin. And so it was a shock for me not to have the foods that I eat, right? People assume that I like spicy food when in Colombia, we don't eat spicy food. I'm used to arepas, and here with our Mexican friends, they have a lot of tortillas, right? So they're changing my arepa here and I don't know where to find it, right? So that really caused a lot of confusion for me. I never understood. I felt for many years like no one's land, like I had no home. When I would go home to Colombia, they're like, oh, you have an accent, where are you from? And then I'm here in the US and they're like, huh, you have an accent, where are you from? So regardless of what I tried to do, I'm still have an accent. I still don't know where I'm really from. And when people ask me, where are you from? I just have to like really think about it. And I look at them in the eyes and I'm like, really? You want me to like, do you have time for me to answer that question? But I think that's something that affects all students. And also even when we're given those survey questions to answer about your race or your ethnicity, sometimes people struggle with that. And we see students struggling all the time answering that question. So I chose the word alignment, and the alignment for me is just more about the process of becoming. So I know that at times I feel more North American, and then at times I feel very Colombian. And so how do I find that medium happy place where I can be an authentic Colombian American? And I think that's my goal for students, to really find that place, that happy place for them. And whether that is correction, whether that is finding the tools and the space to do it, or whether that is you through self-work, doing that work for some healing as well. My parents had really high expectations of me, and I do see this in many students within our community. We see that their parents have super high expectations of the students, but sometimes we don't see these high expectations translated from the other side. So we wanted to make sure that that you guys are aware the framework that we use. We use super high expectations in case we fail. We're still going to fail pretty high, just because we do have expectations for ourselves. We have expectations for others, right? And that sometimes is keeping each other accountable. So we constantly make ourselves accountable, and we are constantly asking ourselves, how do we incorporate these 3 C's, the connecting, the collaborating, and how do we keep our comunidad at the center of our research and practice? So we want you guys to think about that in your own practice, but what we're going to do is we're actually going to show you some examples. So Ms. Lira, can you lead us to some examples?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we'll be talking about how we're doing it. And then we have a lot of examples to show you. So we're going to first start off with how is it that we are incorporating our core value. One of our core values as connecting, right? So we realize that the small team of CFNC and Español, we cannot serve the over 1 million Latinos in North Carolina. So we are working to identify trusted influencers across the entire state. So our goal is to have identified 1 trusted influencer in every community. And so we are constantly making connections and working with individuals. But that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to identify individuals. And one of the things that we're doing to identify, but also to help individuals feel comfortable as we're working with Latinos in post-secondary education process, we have created a Train the Trainer program where we're going into the communities and training individuals. We also are being very intentional, and the resources that we are creating and the content and the publications that we are creating for our community, and creating more opportunities and more spaces, and also language, Spanish language publication for our families and our students. And we also do a lot of connecting people to communities and resources, right? So I'm based in Raleigh, my colleague's based in Catawba or Hickory. And so we can't be everywhere. And so we have to do a lot of what is connecting our families with people in their own communities. Through collaboration, we realize that we are teachers and learners. Like, we work with other individuals, we learn from them, and we have to be open-minded and always being willing to learn, but also to teach, to share what we have, right? We can't gatekeep information. So we share what we know. And Juanes, tell us what else we do through collaboration.
We put ourselves in that space that we can learn from people as well. We amplify their work if they're doing great work. We also, if we don't see that resource, we're going to create it. And that's when we enhance and support people with enhancing their message, whether that is through social media, whether that is maybe through their branding. Sometimes we do work in as a consultant to organizations, just making sure that how can we make it easier for them for our intention. All of that intention. I mean, Hernandez-Lira has talked about how we do this intentionally. How do we reach out the majority of students and families that we can? We also put in the center our comunidad. We cannot do it without thinking about our comunidad. So Juana, tell us about our comunidad.
Yeah, so when we work with the comunidad, we have to be storytellers, right? We are storytellers, and that's why Juanes and I were very intentional in sharing our stories. We have to, it's important that we open up, that we are vulnerable, that we share our challenges, our successes. And this is what's going to help build that trust with our community. Also, we're very intentional in being present in communities, but also showing up in a way where we are understanding our community in a way that we're going to feel, or if parents are going to feel welcomed, right? So the way that you show up and you show out matters. So we are very, very intentional in being present and going into these communities so that our families and our students know that we care and we are rooting for them. We are showing up and showing out for them. And we're also promoters of education and opportunity. So we advocate for different opportunities for our students. And we work with our partners, our collaborators to identify what are some of these opportunities for our students. How can we advocate for educational opportunities for our students? So we also do a lot of that. And honestly, the 3 C's, they are interconnected. We cannot do the work thinking about connection, thinking about collaboration, thinking about comunidad. So we're going to really quickly share with you how CFNC and Español is incorporating those 3 values in our day-to-day work. And so, as I mentioned, if we are present, we try to make a presence in our community. We're very intentional about that, right? So we have actually directly served over 78% of North Carolina counties. And as we've been doing this, we've been very intentional in reaching out to those communities that haven't reached out to us, but that have a need. And so we've been very intentional in going out to those communities, reaching out to individuals. And Juanes, if you want to share with us some other examples.
Absolutely. So Juana mentioned going to the community, sometimes working with those trusted influencers or those people that are helping us move the needle forward in that community. And it is interesting that not everyone is in education. So for example, working through faith-based organizations, working through the nonprofit sector, working through the community colleges, working through the universities, working through all of those are really helping us move the needle forward here. We do have more examples for you.
So some of the other things that we are very involved in are cultural events. So we are very intentional in going out to different communities. This past year, we are in, we've always participated in Fiesta del Pueblo, which is the largest Latino festival across the state. And we didn't see a lot of colleges out there. So this would be a really great opportunity for you all to come out and talk to our Spanish speaking community. And also we were recently in Wilmington at the Festival Latino there. So thinking about what is going on in your community, how can you get involved? How can you have a presence at these activities and these events and collaborate with individuals and connect with the community. I mentioned the Train the Trainer program, and our first Train the Trainer program that we did was with El Centro Hispano in Durham. And so they wanted to learn, how can we serve students? We get a lot of questions about the college process. And so Juanes and I created a Train the Trainer program and went and piloted this with El Centro Hispano. And JuanEs and I have been very involved also with the community college system and the Student Success Center, and helping to collaborate with them and provide some topics and workshops related to the conversations that we hear in our communities that our either educators want to learn about or that our students want to learn about. And JuanEs can share some other examples and then close this off.
Exactly. So Cafecitos Virtual is the opportunity to have one-on-one conversations with different people in our communities, depending on the topics, from mental health to taxes to anything that our community really needs to know about. And we make that intentional connection and intersection with all of those other things. We wanted to show you in practice how of that. I have an example from Appalachian State. If you go to apply in DACA, they have a section specifically with DACA, utilizing some of the resources that we had at CFNC in Español. We also have a great collaboration with So Much Potential. It is a place where you can learn more about immigration impacted individuals and support tools for them. So you can see here, they use a lot of our videos, and we use a lot of our knowledge as well to support them. In our website, we also have virtual advising for Latino students and Hispanic students through a collaboration with College y Consejos with Latinx Ed. So we are leveraging the skills and also the resources that our community has in other places, and trying to put it here in one-stop shop at CFNC en Español. And finally, just being part of the community, that means that we celebrate our culture with our colleagues. That means that we get excited about statewide work. How can we support our students, our families, and always asking those questions, keeping those 3 C's at the front of all we do. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for connecting with us. We would love to continue this conversation in another time. Thank you.
And I just want to add, thank you, Dr. Ramirez and Juana. We so appreciate everything you're doing in the state of North Carolina. Juana, I know you saw Darren's comment in the question and answer about the emotion, and I can speak for myself. That is going to be something that I will forever remember, and that's the beauty of being vulnerable and transparent. So thank you for doing that for us today and sharing that. And I do have one question, if it's okay to ask. What are the criteria to become a trainer?
So to become so JuanEs now can do a Train the Trainer session. So we come in and we train, and then but honestly, we really don't have any criteria. We're just looking for individuals that care and that are working with our family. So you don't have to be an educator. So Centro Hispano, they are a nonprofit, and but they get a lot of questions from our community, and so and it's an organization that cares and wants to make a difference. And so we really don't have like a set list of criteria, JuanEs. But yeah, anyone that's pretty much interested, we can have a conversation. We can talk about how we can support you, and then how you can support your community.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. And everyone, thank you for attending and participating in the CFNC en Español, Advancing Acceso y Éxito in Post-Secondary Education through Connecting, Collaborating, and Comunidad session. Enjoy the remainder of your conference today. Thank you.
Thank you.